G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. I'm sure you remember the clip, "A Stitch in Time Saves Possums," and you may recall that after I found 2 dead possums in the water tank on the 29th of August, I cleaned those possums out, I emptied the tank, but I didn't actually scrape its bottom, and then I spent a fortnight doing rain dances, asking the creator of the universe, the collected Gaia principle, the rainbow serpent, whatever force you care to assign responsibility for micrometeorology, I was asking for rain. And I was doing this at a time where the previous month I'd had 10 millimetres, the month before that I'd had 25 millimetres. I think I'd had 40 mils the month before and 100 mils the month before that. So things was pretty dry, the forest floor was getting pretty dry. And yeah, there I was doing me rain dances, saying, "Pretty please, can we have some rain? The earth is thirsty, the trees and the plants want to drink, the animals are worried, I'd like you to fill me water tank. Can we have some rain, pretty please?" And I got blue sky after blue sky after blue sky. It was kind of discouraging. And finally, after a fortnight of bucketing water to the kitchen sink so I could wash my cooking irons and my crockery and my eating irons before I cook and prepare each meal on my humble little stove. And I do it that way because that way I'm guaranteed that I'm eating off a clean surface, freshly washed, freshly dried. Whereas if I was to keep those pots and pans inside the hut, hanging up on the hooks the way I used to do back in the old days, then I'd never know when was the last time a cockroach had been crawling around inside it in the time between washing it and pulling it off the wall to use. This is a much cleaner and more hygienic system. It just sort of looks a bit hairy to the control freaks and it takes them a while to think it through, but I assure you this is a much better way if you're living in the forest and you don't want to constantly fumigate your own space into a pesticide bomb. And I don't want to breathe pesticides. I'd rather share my food scraps with the possums and train the possums to lick the plate clean after I finish with it, rather than come into me hut in the middle of the night trying to find some food. So anyway, here we see it on the calendar. First dead possums, or found the dead possums the first time on the 12th, cleaned them out, and bingo! I got drizzle the same day I cleaned the 3rd dead possum out. I got 1 millimetre during that night. Nothing much there on Sunday, but Monday, yeah, rained all day, and this morning there was 35 millimetres in the rain gauge. As you can see there, 35 mils. Yeah, not bad for one day, especially when you consider that's 1.4 inches in the old measurement. And in Imperial measurements we talk about rainfall in points. There's 100 points to the inch, so every millimetre is 4 points. And here we see what I call the soil moisture profile rain gauge. It's got almost parallel sides, and when the water level, which is currently here, rises up and overflows, that's when the driveway becomes a total bog hole and you need 4-wheel drive and a different track to get up it each time. I never empty this gauge. That algae's grown in there in the dust and the spores that have fallen in dust storms. When it gets down here, your forest floor is a bushfire fuel bomb and you won't survive. We were down to here, right? We've just had 1.4 inches, 140 points. Now there are some people who like to quantify everything by putting it in terms of money. And these are the people who generally like to laugh at anybody who's so primitive and savage, barbaric, that they might even condescend to think about doing a rain dance. But let's look at it this way. 35 millimetres is 140 points of rain. A point is 100th of an inch. I pay rates on 100 acres. An acre in the old measurement is 66 feet, which is a spear throw, 22 yards, 66 feet, by 660 feet, 220 yards. That's a bow shot. An acre is a spear throw by a bow shot. A point is 100th of an inch. And if you evenly put 1 point on a 1 acre, you get 224 gallons. And a British Imperial gallon weighs 10 pounds. So that 224 gallons is 2,240 pounds. 2,240 pounds is a tonne. So every point on every acre is a tonne. And I got 140 points. 14,000 tonnes of water airdropped onto the 100 acres for which I pay rates to be responsible for everything that's alive. And it's just starting to sprinkle again now. The rain dance hasn't finished giving. Right? Now what does it cost to airdrop a tonne of water onto 1 acre? If you've got a fixed wing crop duster, it's going to cost you $150 a tonne, but it's going to happen at such a speed and altitude that old mate can't guarantee to hit your acre. He's probably going to smear that tonne across a couple of acres, maybe the ones either side of the one you were looking for. Right? But 14,000 tonnes at $150 each is 2.1 million. That was the result of rain dancing. Finally, when it kicked in, after I eventually discovered the third dead possum, because the creator of the universe is not going to answer my rain dance in order to fill my water tank when I've still got a dead possum in the tank and I don't bloody know about it. See? The man on the ground knows a lot, but he doesn't always know everything that's happening on the playing board. Now let's just say we're going to put that tonne of water onto a helicopter and hope it doesn't become a helicoflopter like they sometimes do. That's going to cost $450 a tonne. So only 35 millimetres onto 40 hectares, aka 1.4 inches onto 100 acres, is $6.3 million worth of rainfall. And you know what? When you get results like that, it really doesn't matter if a bunch of alleged pseudo-scientific half-wits want to call me simple, primitive and barbaric. Yeah? Because you know what the simple, primitive barbarians do for their magic rituals? You go out there to the west, about 100 miles, around Weewar, Narrabri, Moree, Cooney-Barrabrand. Out there, they grow cotton. Right? And somebody told them that when lightning flashes through the air, it fixes nitrogen to the water and it falls onto the ground as a very dilute form of liquid nitrogen. Well, nitric acid, you know, nitrogen dissolved in water. And this is a fertiliser, right? And therefore, thus and because they have turbine engine crop dusters that can lift 2 or 3 tonnes of water per takeoff. And they have bloody great big tanks of liquid nitrogen on the side of the runway. And in the aircraft, they have a bottle of liquid nitrogen. And they get up there just on sunrise, if there's been a dew or if there's some light rain forecast, and they fly up and down the cotton crops spraying water with liquid nitrogen bubbled into it, trying to pretend that they are thunderstorms, in the hope, the faint magic voodoo hope, that that's going to increase their crop yields. Now I put so much scorn onto this idea because I read of trials done by the British Department of Agriculture where they came up with the theory that plants detect the electrical field of an approaching thunderstorm long before the first raindrop arrives. And to test that theory, they covered paddocks of mustard seed, right? Mustard plants, and they measured the crop growth and the metabolic rates and all the rest of it. And above the top of the paddock, they had a wire mesh grid you know, like chicken wire, suspended 12 feet off the ground on poles, you know, very expensive to set up. And they connected it to a really big DC electric generator, right? So they could vary the electrical field between the ground and the air with the plants in the middle. And they proved that before the first drop of water hits the ground, the plants have increased their metabolic rate by 30% above normal. They're growing at 130% of normal. Turbocharged mustard plants. All because they detected the approaching field effect of the thunderstorm. Right? It's totally uneconomic for the amount of fuel consumed to generate the field to try and trick the plants to grow faster, and you have to water them anyway, otherwise they just grow themselves to death. It's like a dry storm going over, everything gets ready for the rain, grows really fast, and the water doesn't come, so it's actually worse than not even seeing a cloud. Right, well, out there in Moree, they pay $150 a tonne for their magic rituals to kid themselves that they can get the cotton plants to grow, whereas me, the half-wit fool on the hill, I do a bloody rain dance and I get anywhere from 2.1 to $6.3 million worth of rain airdropped onto the 100 acres that I'm responsible for. So who's laughing at me rain dance now? And what the fuck for? If it works, do it. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.